Hey guys, Tarke here, and I just wanted to give up a little build idea I had this morning. I'm going to hospital in a few hours. I haven't got anything to do. I didn't want to get back into a Path of Exile session, so I thought, let's just Theorycraft some backup plans in case I have any rips. And I've come up with this. It is the non-crit Bow Berserker. So far, it doesn't sound too revolutionary. I've played this style of build before. This style of build's been quite popular. What started off the whole King of the Forest build, his original character was a non-crit bow poison-based Berserker. But there's a few interesting things you can do with the new patch. Now, all right side of tree or any kind of non-Voltaxic poison-based bow build struggles with their auras. What I mean by that is, if you're not Voltaxic, you don't really have any auras which scale your damage particularly well. You can run haste to get some movement speed and some attack speed. I've done that before in the past, but it never felt that amazing. So you often end up using something like Grace and Arctic Armor. I tried coming up with a idea which seemed fairly interesting at the time, which was running an running an Alpha Howl with all three purities in the Alpha Howl. That would allow you to run all three without needing any reservation. The problem with that is they'd only get to level 22, and to get the 5th additional all res, not the 4% all res, you need level 23. So to do that, you then need to have some aura effects on the tree, and it's something I'll try again in the future, but for now, that's not what the point of this video is. So my thought process was, well, why not just go mind over matter? By going mind over matter, you have a situation where you just don't run the auras that you'd normally run. Berserker has inbuilt leech for mana, quite a lot of mana leech, 1% normally, then 3% if you've killed recently. That's very, very powerful. These builds tend to play Val packs, they tend to play Acro, and it's like you have a large HP pool, you get hit, and you're just constantly leeching like this, leeching like this, leeching like this. You don't get hit too often because you're a range build, you're an Acro build. So your mana spiking down pretty low doesn't matter. The way that most bow builds operate, as you can see, their mana cost is pathetic. It's like 46, and you have so much inbuilt leech, you just like attack once and you're fine. So you won't really run into many sustain problems. Now I've come up with 3 versions of this tree. One with mind over matter with acro, one with mind over matter no acro, and then just a traditional no mind over matter tree, which I've just updated with the new items in mind. So let's just quickly cover some of the new items which makes this build interesting, and then I'll talk some more over some sort of ideas I've had with it. Now the main one is Cherubim's Maleficence. This is an item which I really didn't want to make content about because I think it's a very overpowered and underlooked item. This is going to be a sleeper OP item. I think once someone like Mathel picks it up, once someone like Ziggy, with someone with a large enough audience and big enough reach, picks this item up, it's going to go crazy high in price. This was an item which was already usable lastly, because it has the 100% increased life leech per second. This makes it incredibly powerful on any leech-centric build. Obviously, Berserkers are pretty leech-centric. With the way Berserkers work, they don't really need the increased life leech, but it helps a little bit. But the most important thing, what I'm really talking about, is the 80% increased chaos damage. 80% increased chaos damage is kind of a lot. To give you an idea, running it in this build is a 24.5% increase on our total poison DPS. That's quite a lot for a chest piece which also gives up to 100 life and increased life leech per second. That's slightly okay. So, other than that, it's pretty bog standard, nothing's changed too much. Use a Lionized Glare, another quite thing that I liked about going mind over matter with Lionized Glare. Lionized Glare has inbuilt 100 flat mana. I don't know, it seems like the perfect item for this build. They completely destroyed Reach of the Council. Usually this build would use either a Lionized Glare or a Reach of the Council because it was non-crit. So now you have to use Lionized Glare. Lionized Glare are very cheap. They have a bad implicit, meaning what you do is you just spam by them and just corrupt them until you get something like culling or just something that you can use. And yeah, it's just like a cheap, reliable DPS bow, has very fast attack speed, has good base fizz damage, your hits can't be evaded. Seems good. Drillneck did take a hit, but Drillneck is still very, very powerful. Other than the Cherubim, it's all pretty bog standard. You run evasion in every single slot. So you just go for evasion pieces. Go for hybrid armor evasion boots, so you have an easy time coloring and an easy time with resists. I like fitting chaos resistance onto 2 or 3 pieces of my gear, as you can see. And because of that, using 2-tone boots means that you can still cap out your resistances pretty easily. If you don't like running chaos resistance on your gear, then you can very easily overcap with these 2-tone boots. You'll notice that I haven't gone too crazy with the resistances because I've just done random things in there. I've done jewels without resistances. You can cap out resistances very easily. guys, stop having a go at me for my builds not having resistance cap. It's boring filling in perfect resistances on every single random rare that you make. End of rant. The only other interesting things is use a snake bite for poison, use a frenzy curse on hit setup to maintain your frenzy charges to maintain your poison, and use a Doedri's Damning for easy dual curse. Obviously, ideally you would have additional curse corrupted somewhere in your gear. I tried fitting it into the tree, but it was just too many points. And then that allows you another ring to get life, chaos damage, etc. The ring that I've put here has the Elrion Flat Chaos craft on there. Ideally, you would have an Essence of Envy Chaos % damage craft, but we're just going with like gear that you can reliably buy, anyone can use, whatever. For flasks, we've gone for a Silver Flask, an Alchemist Quicksilver, and a Sin's Rebirth. The reason why I've picked Sin's Rebirth over its series is it's just slightly more damage, and we already have enough leech. If you're on a budget, you can use an its series instead of a Sin's Rebirth. There's absolutely no problem for it. And then I've left 2 flask slots open. I would probably recommend in builds which take Vile Pact, just for my personal preference. I'm not a massive fan of playing Vile Pact with life, because you don't have any positive regen. Probably run 2 health pots. We also have increased life recovery from flasks in all of the versions but 1. And in the No Mighty Mana one, you have a lot of increased life recovery from flasks. So, you know, having some life flasks in there, it helps a little bit. Right. So, that's the gear. Pretty bog standard. For jewels, we've gone for life and then 2 double dipping rolls. You can go for chaos damage, increased damage, or projectile damage. Those will double dip. Anything else which is good is just attack speed, resistances, attributes as you need them. But let's get into the core tree. So, I'll cover the skills very, very quickly. So your main setup is Tornado Shot. You can use Barrage instead of Tornado Shot and use Volley Fire Jewels, and you can fit them in here, here, and then either here, here, or here. So you will need to mix your points around a little bit. I've chosen Tornado Shot. I prefer Tornado Shot to Barrage in general. Yes, Tornado Shot does kind of need a lot of either links or enchants to support it, but in a non-crit build, running GMP is very easy on a 6/5 link, because you kind of just run out of supports in a non-crit version, because normally with crits they'd be using increased critical strike damage gem or crit chance to fill in their other sockets. So Tornado Shot, GMP, Pierce, added Chaos, that's the core 4. Void Manipulation as 5th, Slower Proj as 6th. Very bog standard. You use a Frenzy Curse on hit setup in your chest, and again we're getting dual curse through the Doedri's. If you get the Corruption, you can cut it. If you somehow manage to get these extra points on the tree for 7 points, it's doable, but you'd have to cut a lot, so I'm not too keen on it. And that is Frenzy, Curse on hit GMP, Temp Chains, Vulnerability. Temp Chains is a bigger DPS increase than Vulnerability, and it's also a defensive increase, so if you can only run 1, go for Temp Chains. You can also get both Temp Chains and Vulnerability corrupted on gloves. Snakebites are quite easy to corrupt. So if you want to, you know, not run a Frenzy Curse on hit setup or fit other links in, you can corrupt your gloves, just as a heads up. If you do get a 6th link chest, it's really not needed, but you probably run something like either Pierce or Faster Attacks for better quality of life. For now, I've just thrown in a Floating Golem. I haven't activated the Golem in the DPS sheet. It is a nice little DPS increase. Personally, I don't like running Golems because I find them kind of clunky to maintain. If you want to run them, you can, and you can see whatever. Wither, Spell Totem, Fast Casting, Increased Duration, very important. This is what boosts your single target, and you run this in your gloves. Another important reason why I go for these particular items. Snakebites are Evasion, Energy Shield hybrid. All of these poison builds, they want a Wither Totem setup. Getting the colors on a raw Evasion piece is very easy. Getting 2 off color in a hybrid Energy Shield piece, very easy. Our Castle Damage Taken setup goes in our boots, because again, it is armor Evasion hybrid. Much, much cheaper, much, much easier. In those, you want a Castle Damage Taken level 1, a Mortal Core level 3, Increased Duration capped, Vol Lightning Trap capped. I'm not too sure how I feel about Vol Haste after the nerf to it. You can run it if you want to. You could also run it instead of the Flame Golem. You could put it in a off 6 link here, but I've chosen Vol Lightning Trap. I just prefer Vol Lightning Trap. It's consistent. You can fit in other Vol skills as you see fit. And then in your helm, you just run with Grace, Arctic Armor, Blink Arrow, and Faster Attacks. Now, obviously, you won't be running Grace and Arctic Armor in the Mind of Mana versions. This is for the non-Mind of Mana version. So for the MoM versions, you have 2 extra links to play with. A lot of people are fans of running both Mirror Arrow and Increased Duration in their Blink Fast Attack setup. It's good for bossing, so it means that for a boss, you drop your totem, attack, attack, attack. You can drop a Mirror Arrow, you can blink, and basically it causes a lot of distraction. But mess around with it. Now, the main thing that you're looking for in these trees is getting Cast Effect. Cast Effect is a very nice DPS increase on both your Temp Chains and your Enfeeble. If you drop these 3 points and you compare it to getting these 3 points, this goes 955. This is 997. Now, if you're going to be primarily farming bosses, bosses do have reduced cast effectiveness, and if you only cared about DPS, then you would rather take 3 points in something like this than in this. But for general mapping, this is very nice. The increased cast effectiveness also increases the slows on your temp chains, so it's a nice little defensive buff, and it helps justify coming up this upper route. One other small thing, if you don't like playing Valpact, you can drop it. You get a lot of natural regen. You get regen here, here, and here. You don't have to run with Valpact with all the increased life leech recovery from Cloaked and Savagery. And from the Cherubiums, you will heal very naturally. But a lot of people like running a Valpact in their Berserkers. So that's pretty much that. The reason why we pick up Arcane Chemistry is we get effective HP from our mana pool. So yeah, it gives us effective HP. You can see that our unreserved, you get 1.8k mana, so we get an additional 1.8k health from this setup. Well, health from this setup. Also give you reduced flask charges used, which helps with your flask uptime. In the non-acro version, for people who want to go for more armor-centered gear, and going for armor-centered gear is perfectly fine. As you can see, we have to run one hybrid armor piece anyway for easy colors. We route through Ranger instead of cutting these points. You could route through the evasion modes, but it feels less efficient then. You can mess around with it a little bit. And we focus up on picking all the important like Primal Spirit and Druidic Rite. Go very heavy on the Flask. Your Flask uptime should be very good in this kind of build. And you can see the mana goes up to 2.4k and the health goes up a little bit. But you do need to remember you do miss out on the phase aggro, and the DPS drops a little bit as well. Now, the non-Mind Over Matter version obviously will have the most damage, as it gets a lot of points off the tree. So you can see that we go into Ranger start. It turns out Aspect of the Eagle does double dip. Originally I didn't think it did, but apparently it does. So it feels good, man. Get some Heart of Oak for extra life. Get some Chaos damage, get some Chaos and resists. Come down here for the Jewel and the life. If you don't have a good 3-point Jewel, instead of spending the points here, you can spend the points this way. And with all of these setups, if you don't have very good Jewels to start, then don't prioritize the Jewel sockets as highly. Again, the reason why we don't get Frenzy charges is because of the Snake Bites. Snake Bites reduce the duration of our Frenzy charges, and our Bandits are Oak attack speed. Passive point. If you want a quick breakdown, I also did write a comparison option between the two DPS types. So as you can see, the first option, which was Phase Acro Mind of Matter, had 1,075,000 DPS, 6,000 life, 1,810 mana with Acro. Option 2 had slightly less damage, slightly more life, slightly more mana, but obviously you need to take into account the loss mitigation of the Phase Acro. And this final version without either two has about 50k, has a lot more, has about 50,000 more DPS. It has more life, obviously, but it doesn't have the Mind of Matter thing. One other thing I will say is this version has the highest DPS against bosses, in theory, because you do need to remember that bosses do have reduced curse effectiveness and stuff. So if you were to look at Shaper / Guardian style bosses, the DPS plummets. This is true of any poison-centric build. Because of the reduced curse effectiveness, the other two versions, while they do have longer poisons because they get potency of will, a lot of their effective DPS from skitting runes is lost, if you compare. Whereas in the non-Mighty Matter version, we actually invest into raw DPS nodes. Now, obviously that's something to consider. You are squishier, but you do have, you know, a better DPS setup. Again, this isn't a build that I'm re-rolling to. This is kind of like a backup idea. It's just something that I was kind of been thinking about. I've been wanting to make a Mind Over Matter Berserker after the changes to it. What will probably happen is if my assassin dies, I've got quite a lot of currency saved up now. If I somehow invest all of my currency and then die before I can get my Ice Shot character back off the ground, I would probably roll into this. This is a very nice budget character. If you look at the gearing again, there's nothing really too expensive in there. The Sin's Rebirth is purely just a fluff item. The DPS difference between this and Iziri's really wasn't that crazy, and one could make an argument that Iziri's is better. I just like the Sin's Rebirth because it's an inbuilt Stibnite flask, and it leaves you with 2 open slots. You can always, obviously, run both, and your DPS will go up accordingly. But yes, I'm Tarke. Have a good day. Bye-bye.